Core early this morning. Within hours, the front lawn of Queen's Park was a sea of protesters calling out the Ford government's planned healthcare overhaul. Lisa Shing was at the protest and joins us live now from Queen's Park. Lisa, it's quiet over there now, but earlier today, certainly a loud message from protesters.
It was, and that message was essentially to keep healthcare services the same and not make the changes the government has announced so far. The folks had a lot of different concerns overall, and that's because the government has made a lot of changes since taking power. You could hear the crowd before you could see them, marching up to Queen's Park by the thousands to deliver their message. People came from all over the province, from Windsor.
They just can't keep on cutting.
And Ottawa.
We won't have services because you cut too much.
Even Sault Ste. Marie.
I work with adults with autism, so I'm really fearful just the lack of funding to sustain a really good life for them.
These protesters are concerned about changes the government has made, including merging ambulance services, reducing provincial funding for public health units, and changing OHIP Plus so it only kicks in if someone doesn't have private insurance.
My prescriptions are no longer free, and I just finished school, so I'm not thriving economically.
Why are you here today?
Because prescriptions are very expensive and we cannot afford it.
Others say a lot of political issues are interconnected.
You know, it's hard to get health care to people if they don't have housing.
The opposition criticized the PCs for setting overall health funding at less than the rate of inflation.
This protest is all about making sure that the people of Ontario are getting the health services that they need.
Ontario's health minister defended her government's decisions.
What we are trying to do is to make sure that people's money is being spent wisely. Everything that we are doing is to strengthen our public health care system.
And Christine Elliott also said today that these changes are not intended to pave the way for privatization, though some of the people I spoke with outside said they don't buy it.
And Lisa, we've talked about the cuts to public health units before, but there was a bit of a squabble about that today as well.
There was, and this issue seems to be ongoing. Essentially, the mayors of a few big cities in the province, including Toronto, wrote a letter to the premier saying they want a little more heads up, as well as a few more details and better communication when the province makes decisions that affects the cities. And today, Doug Ford hit back and said, well, essentially saying the city of Toronto is fear-mongering and inflating the numbers. So no doubt this is not the last we'll hear of that, Chris.
All right, thanks for this tonight, Lisa. So you saw Christine Elliott in Lisa's piece there. She is the minister overseeing the changes to health care. Earlier today, she spoke with our Queen's Park reporter, Mike Crawley.
Minister Elliott, these cuts to Toronto Public Health came at a time when the city had already done its budget. How fair is that to expect them to cut money after they've already set their budget?
In actual fact, the City of Toronto, with their public health department, has had a surplus for the last 10 years totaling over $52 million, so about $5 million per year. So this and the actual total of the changes will amount to $33 million in 1 year, up to $42 million after 3 years. So this is third of 1% of their budget. I'm confident that the City of Toronto can find the money to meet these priorities, and in addition, the province is uploading some of the costs out of the recently announced $90 million a year program to provide dental services to low-income seniors. $15 million of that is attributable to Toronto residents, and the city has been paying for that. So they won't have to pay for that anymore. The province is going to do that. So I'm sure with the accommodations being made, taking into account what's being uploaded, there will be the money to provide those essential services.
Okay, but Mayor Tory, who used to be party leader, used to be Ontario PC party leader, saying that these cuts are going to be too difficult for the city to make and in this short a period of time. So are you questioning his credibility on this?
I am. There's a difference of opinion to begin with the amount of money that's involved. Some of the numbers that have been sent around by City of Toronto officials are not even close to the actual numbers that I've just indicated. So this is something that is manageable. This is something that the City of Toronto can deal with. And I look forward to sitting down with Mayor Tory to try and figure out how we can make this all work.
Some of the language coming from you and from the Premier has suggested that the City and Councillor Joe Cressy in particular have been fear-mongering. You know, how helpful is it in this kind of a debate for you to be accusing another level of government of fear-mongering?
I don't think we should be accusing anybody of anything of the sort, and I would really like to see the level of rhetoric lowered on this topic. I think we all need to be reasonable and sit down and talk to each other about what the particular stresses the city is facing and what particular help the province can be. As you know, the Health Promotion and Protection Act makes it the municipality's requirement alone to provide public health services. That said, we do recognize that there is a need for the province to become involved, and we are more than ready to do our part.
And now, public health is one of those things that prevents people from ending up in hospital, and at the same time your government is trying to tackle the hallway medicine problem. How can you assure people that these cuts to public health are not going to result in more people ending up using our hospital services?
Because it's a question of priorities. If we focus our attention on the things that are the actual priorities and that make people well and keep them out of hospital, then there will be that money to go around. But some of the money in Toronto Public Health has been spent on things like having a whole department devoted to advocacy. Is that necessary when everyone agrees that public health is so important? I think when you put that beside vaccinations for children, I know that the vaccinations are the more important issue. I know that the people of Ontario feel that way, and I'm certain the people of Toronto feel that way as well.
The last thing that I'll ask you, you've dangled this possibility of there being some sort of one-time funding for the city. Can you talk about what kind of dollar value you're talking about? When is this going to be negotiated? Is it up for negotiation?
I would say it's premature to say right now, because that is going to need to be following a discussion with Mayor Tory and the specific concerns that he has, and I look forward to having that discussion with him, because we do both agree that public health is very important, and it's a question of maintaining the priorities and making sure that everything will be covered, as I'm sure it can be.
Thanks for your time, Minister.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, earlier in that conversation, you heard Minister Elliott mention a difference of opinion when it comes to how the province and the city are looking at the funding numbers for public health. Mike Crawley has broken down that difference and laid out how two levels of government can look at the same set of numbers and come out with different conclusions. You can find that analysis on our website, cbc.ca/Toronto, or the CBC News app.
Taking care of city trees is important, right? That's why the city hires professionals to do the upkeep. Well, a new report finds that some of the private contractors they've hired prefer to go for coffee or shop instead of actually tending to the trees. I'm Ali Chiasson, and I'll have that story coming up.
Turning to the other major story of the day, you are looking at video of devastating flooding in Bracebridge, shot today from above. It gives you a sense of the dangerous conditions people are dealing with down below. Thousands of people face the chance of more flooding as a rainfall warning looms. And some residents are in a battle to save their homes. It is the 7th day cottage country communities in the Muskoka region have been under a state of emergency as rising water levels blow past previous records. People fear it's about to get worse. As much as 35 millimeters of rain could fall by Thursday. Magda Gebrselassie is there.
The sun is shining, but do not be fooled. This collapsed house shows the true danger of the ongoing flooding in Bracebridge.
If you can see my neighbors across the way, they've lost their boathouses. A fella just down the road lost one of his houses down into the river, just from the flow being so fast. It's undermined the riverbanks, so that's where most of the damage is being caused right at the moment.
hoping to avoid the same fate, other residents are getting help from soldiers who have been deployed to the area.
The amount of work that we've been able to do in a couple of days has been awesome. There are thousands of sandbags coming in, and I was only going to do one row, and we've got 3-4 rows high by 2-3 rows deep. And my neighbor across the road, he's got his house saved because of them coming in this morning and putting a break wall across his place. And I think they're going to do a little bit of work for another person just a little bit further down. So it's been great to have them here.
About 160 soldiers are here helping with sandbagging, reinforcing properties, and assisting in evacuations.
We arrived on Sunday. As soon as we got here on Sunday, we started off by prepping a bunch of sandbags, and once we finished that, then loaded them up and started trucking them out to the community.
Residents here are grateful for the help. So these soldiers have committed to being in the area for about 2 weeks, and there's a lot more work to be done here as there's more rain on the way. Magda Gebre-Celeste, CBC News, Bracebridge.
But it's not just the Muskoka region under flood threat. Thousands of people from Ottawa through to Quebec and into New Brunswick face the potential of more misery. Our Hannah Thibodeau reports from Gatineau on the lack of certainty of when the flood fears will end.
We're on the Gatineau side of the Ottawa River, and you can tell the Ottawa River has just taken over these homes in the area. It's above my knees. If we go this way, that is where the ferry goes from the Quebec side to the Ottawa side. However, of course, they've had to shut that down. Typically, you would see about 2,000 vehicles using that ferry a day. It's been shut down because we are on the road that is used to get the vehicles over there. Right now, mostly people are traveling by boat to get supplies for their homes.
This is how we do grocery shopping now. There's no running water now. So tomorrow we go grab some big water jugs and try to carry them down.
And today's groceries.
Today's a little bit of stocking up.
At this house, it's David Prue and his family. They have 3,500 sandbags surrounding the house. However, the water won.
We built a big wall around the house, the sandbags and all. But fortunately, the water was stronger, so the wall collapsed, and that's when the water started coming.
The water in the
about a foot, inside.
This is the second time since 2017 that David and his family have been washed out because of floods. In fact, they were just about to finish up renovations from the 2017 floods when water completely filled their basement. I want to show you down here. This is where people come in if they want to bring sandbags in. If they go out to get their supplies, they'll park their car along the road, and off to the left side you see people park their boats so they can make it into their homes. However, the water has not yet reached peak levels here, and the weather forecast is not looking good for the rest of the week, with rain expected over the next couple of days. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Gatineau.
And new back here tonight, a shoreline hazard warning has been issued by the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority for areas along Lake Ontario. Water levels are projected to continue rising until late May or even early June. Remember when the Toronto Islands flooded 2 years ago? Well, the current water level is about half a meter away from those levels. And what could make it worse, wind gusts could produce offshore waves as high as 2 meters tomorrow. Let's bring in Nick Cernkovich now. Nick, so many flood concerns that we've just discussed, many in our region. Walk us through what's coming and when.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And there, like you said, there's a couple aspects to this for the City of Toronto. One is the rainfall, but the other is the winds that we're going to see through tomorrow as well. So we're going to talk about both of those. But broadly speaking, the big issue here is the rain. And we're starting to see a little bit of rainfall just moving into southern Ontario. We've seen that down around the Windsor area. But it's part of a much bigger system, this Texas low that's going to sweep across the region over the next 36 to 48 hours. Now, there's sort of two waves of it, one just around the Michigan area and then another one further back. And so we've got a couple rounds of this coming up over the next day and a half. We mentioned the rainfall warnings a little earlier. There they are again, and this is where we're seeing some of the flooding already. Rainfall totals could reach as much as about 35 plus millimeters. And this area in pink here actually is freezing rain and mixed precipitation that will lead this system. But even if you're not in the rainfall warning, there are special weather statements right across the board here. Potential for about 20 to 40 millimeters of rain, so not quite warning hitting that warning level, but nonetheless, heavy rainfall expected. And all of this, or much of this, flows into Lake Ontario. Now, with that tomorrow morning, we've got wind gusts that could reach about 60, even 70 kilometers per hour, and they're coming right off of the water. And that's the issue that we've got here with that easterly wind. The breeziest of it coming through the morning hours tomorrow and then sort of starting to taper off. There's your rainfall forecast heading into the next 24 hours, the risk of thunderstorms as well, and then another round of rain for tomorrow evening. Full details on that coming up.
All right, lots to track.
You bet.
Okay, talk to you in a bit.
Okay.
Into the construction zone at Union Station. I'm Lorenda Redekop. I'll give you a look at the work still happening, the latest on the revitalization, and when it could all be finished. That story coming up.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
A shocking new report from the city's Auditor General shows just how little work is being done by some forestry crews contracted by the city. It's adding up to a lot of wasted money. Now the city is asking what exactly is going wrong and who is accountable. Ali Chiasson has a revealing look at how the AG is saying money most certainly does not grow on trees.
Crafty work by the city's audit committee comparing the daily work logs of 45 private contractors to where their truck's GPS system pinged.
1.7 hours cannot be validated by the GPS reports.
Councillor Stephen Holliday is the chair of the audit committee, which found over half of the crews didn't have work logs that added up.
And consequently, the report shows that in the afternoons there were some stops that really don't match up or make sense.
The investigation found that some didn't stop anywhere near tree service locations. Instead, their truck's GPS pinged at coffee shops, plazas, residential neighborhoods, on streets with no trees, and the time spent at those locations far exceeded the allotted 60 minutes for lunch and breaks.
We got some great maps in here that are very, very telling.
Like this one, showing that a truck drove by a tree for which the worker logged 45 minutes of labor at that site.
Every citizen should be concerned that every tax dollar is being maximized.
The report found that in an 8-hour workday, the crews only spent under 3 hours actually working on trees, costing the city $2.6 million per year.
Well, these things make me very angry, and I think beyond obviously improving the degree to which we watch over these private contractors who supposedly do work for the city, that we've got to go back after the ones that didn't do work they charged us for. And so to me, to take legal proceedings to recover some of that money and to take a look at whether some of these companies should be disqualified from doing business with us because they didn't, pay attention themselves to whether people were doing the money is something that just is common sense. And so I'll be pushing for that.
Tell me a bit about LEAF.
So LEAF stands for Local Enhancement and Appreciation of Forests, and we're a nonprofit organization.
So what is your reaction to the news?
It's very disappointing. The City of Toronto has made a commitment to tree maintenance, which is amazing, and then to learn that the private contractors are not making good on that commitment is very disappointing, very disturbing. I think for the mature trees, that preventative pruning is very essential to try to at least minimize the damage that's going to happen during both summer and winter storms. This is an opportunity just to make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that that actually happens and our urban forest is healthier.
The Auditor General will submit the report and her recommendations to the Audit Committee on Friday. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
After a decade of construction and a lot of this fencing, Union Station is finally getting closer to being finished. Today, the city gave us a sneak peek of the latest upgrades and additions. Lorenda Redekop was along for a look behind the scenes.
There's still lots of work to go on a project that was supposed to be finished in 2015. The revitalization of Union Station is set to cost more than $800 million. That's close to $200 million over the original budget.
You can't anticipate all of the things that are required in a heritage structure of this nature. It's huge. You don't know when you open up a wall what's behind it.
It's a 100-year-old building. Sprucing up Union Station will triple the space for commuters. Remember when it looked like this? The new food court opened last year. Here's the new look just underground along Front Street. Another big change from what it used to be. The plan is to turn this into an evening event space with a view of the Royal York. None of this area existed before. It all had to be dug out, and that's all as the trains continue to run above us. This area is going to be turned into a retail space. It will become the new Bay Concourse, filled with large chain stores, not expected to be finished until late 2020. This area to the west will be done later this year, but then it'll take another year for Union Station to transform it into a fresh market area.
We're talking at the moment to Kensington Market retailers and Leslieville cheese shops and those kind of different areas that represent the best of our city.
The new date for all the revitalization work to be done near the end of 2020. But that doesn't end construction at the station. More will start to the south as Metrolinx adds more GO trains. So get ready for another project at the largest transportation hub in the country. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
I'm coming away from me. I hear the walls repeating, the falling of my feet, and it sounds like drumming.
Oof, listen to the pipes on that guy. No wonder the musical Hadestown is leading the pack today with 14 Tony Award nominations. They honor the best plays and musicals on Broadway. And Jelena Adzik is here with a bit of a preview. So tell us about the Canadian connections with this year's nominees.
Good Canadian stories attached to this. Yes, a lot to be proud of. Okay, we're going to start by talking about Ain't Too Proud, though. This is the story of the Temptations, and this is one where it really has incredible choreography, orchestrations. The music, of course, is amazing. So we've got Best Direction of a Musical for Des McAnuff. Now, this is a man who's very familiar on the Toronto scene. He's won 2 Tony Awards already. Best Director for 1985 Big River, again in 1993 for The Who's Tommy. And also we see attached to this one, Ain't Too Proud, up for Best Choreography, Sergio Trujillo. And there are so many other ones. Best Costume Design, Best Lighting, Best Orchestration, Best Book of a Musical. Let's take a listen to the sound of this one right now. Ain't Too Proud.
I guess you say what can make me feel this way, my girl. Talking about my girl.
They seem the perfect amount of pride. They're proud.
Yes, they do. They really do, yeah. I'll tell you who else is proud, though. Bob Martin. He is up for Best Book of a Musical for this one, The Prom. And this is a musical that is also up for Best Direction of a Musical for Casey Nicola. Also got, Bob Martin from Toronto. When we talk about him, this is an alum of Second City. His Broadway debut was a starring role in the Broadway musical, which he wrote the book for, The Drowsy Chaperone, and that went on to win the Tony for him for Best Book in 2006. So now he's back with this story on the stage, a lesbian couple who just wants to go to the prom together, and they are not allowed to go. So it's got some real resonance, especially in the United States, where, of course, gay marriage is not legal everywhere. So it's just one of those that has a lot of bite, both on and off the stage. So a lot of people will be excited to hear more about the prom. Would you like to hear it right now?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it.
But till that day comes, I say cue the drums. It's time to dance.
Okay, and also quickly up for Best Musical against them is Tootsie and Beetlejuice.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Blast from the past.
Right? I know, yeah.
All right, so those are some of the names that people may not know right away, but there are some famous faces as well that we'll see on Tony night.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, we know more and more. They're trying to get the stars in there so that they can get us in there, get those seats filled out. And that's what they do when they bring big powerhouse names like Annette Bening, for example. So she is up for a Best Actress nomination. And then you also have these 3 actors I'm about to mention all vying for the same particular award.
Oof, tough.
Yes, tough. I'm talking about Best Performance by a Lead Actor in a Play. So first of all, I'm going to give you a look at Bryan Cranston. He is up for Network, which has 4 Tony noms in total. And then I'm also going to give you a look at Jeff Daniels. He's up for To Kill a Mockingbird, and it's got a slew, 8 nominations in total. Wow. And last, Adam Driver. He's up for Burn This. So that is an interesting category to watch for. And we can all watch for the Tonys themselves, which are going to happen on June 9th. James Corden is hosting again, so I'm kind of excited about that.
Should be a good show. And I'm proud to say that I knew all of those faces.
You should be proud. That's excellent. Good for you.
Thanks, Jelena.
Talk to you soon.
We just have lots of fun times together. Even like when I'm upset, I can just talk to her.
Well, she's a police officer by day and a mentor by night. Meet the woman helping girls in the GTA through a club she started. That's coming up after the break. Toronto police just provided an update on the city's latest homicide. A 28-year-old man was gunned down Sunday night. Greg Ross joins us live from the scene of the shooting. Greg, what did police have to say?
Well, I can tell you, Chris, police not providing many new details here other than to say that they are looking for assistance from the public in trying to identify some suspects. Here's what we do know, Chris. At about 10:30 on Sunday night, a 28-year-old Taylor Lawrence Gannon was shot right here in front of his home. Now, emergency responders found him with multiple gunshot wounds to his upper body and to his head. He was rushed to hospital where he clung to life for about 24 hours, but we're told that early this morning he did pass away. Now, police believe that this shooting was targeted, and today they said that witnesses saw a man running from the scene just moments after the shooting.
At this point in the investigation, we believe that Mr. Gannon was shot by a lone armed suspect in a targeted shooting. This suspect is described as a male with dark brown skin, approximately 5'11" in height, thin build, and would have fled from the scene on foot. Anyone with information is asked to contact us at Toronto Police Homicide, through Toronto Police social media, or if you wish to remain anonymous, through Crime Stoppers.
Now, police have not confirmed a motive in this shooting either, but they were asked a number of interesting questions today, including some about the possibility of this being the result of a turf war between tow truck drivers. Now, neighbors here tell us that Gannon was a tow truck driver. In fact, he often parked his tow truck here on his property, and one neighbor even telling us a story about how that tow truck was vandalized at one point last year while it was parked in his driveway.
His tow truck was burned. I don't know, it was it went on fire. So
I threw gasoline inside.
And it was parked out on the road
right
when that happened.
It went right on the road.
Well, you still see the mark
in front of their house.
That was in the summer?
Last summer, yeah.
Now, police were asked about that as well. They say they would not confirm that. What they did say is they are looking into everything, including whether or not that this was the result of some sort of turf war. And again, they're asking for anybody who may have any information about any of these allegations to come forward and to tell police everything that you know. Chris?
Certainly shocking details. Thanks for this tonight, Greg. Violence spills out into the streets of Caracas today. Coming up later in the show, the latest on the volatile situation unfolding in Venezuela. We'll take you to Surrey, BC first, though, where a high-speed car chase and wild street brawl has residents of a quiet residential neighborhood feeling rattled. Police say the violence that sent 3 people to hospital is likely linked to Metro Vancouver's ongoing gang conflict. Jesse Johnson takes us through the video, but first a warning, some of the images in his story are graphic.
The video starts here, just before 8 p.m. Saturday night. It's sunny and quiet at 88A Avenue and 135A Street. Then, chaos breaks out. Surveillance video shows vehicles speeding across people's yards. 2 cars smash into each other on the street. Then, neighbors are stunned at the mayhem that ensues.
It looks like any movie act or so. You know, it doesn't look like, say, it happens in front of my house. I was very surprised and very shocked.
Like, he hit both our cars, and then he flew across the yard. You can see the tracks. You can follow them. They're deep.
So I'm like, well, what now? You know, it's not, oh my God, I'm scared. It's like, what now? What this time?
Neighbors say 2 groups of young men got into a brawl, and most of the cars involved sped off before police arrived. One neighbor who was too scared to speak on camera says there was a man whose eyes were bright red from being pepper sprayed. He was screaming for help, and he had a big gash on the back of his head. 3 people were taken to hospital, and 1 has serious injuries.
It's so concerning.
Police say they have good descriptions of the vehicles involved, but so far, no arrests have been made.
So our initial information that we have at this time has led investigators to believe it may be related to Lower Mainland gang conflict.
How many people watch this already? 55,000 plus.
Gurpreet Sahota with the community group Wake Up Surrey says just hours after he posted the video to his Facebook page, it had tens of thousands of views. Comments call for more manpower for the Surrey RCMP, which has hundreds fewer officers than Vancouver.
Our police officers in Surrey RCMP working hard, but they are in less numbers, and that's why maybe they're not making any difference.
The Surrey RCMP agrees more resources would help with investigations like this.
We could always do more with more.
The mayor has taken heat for not hiring new RCMP officers this year, but he says that would make little sense when a new municipal police force is coming. But for people here, they're not interested in the arguments at City Hall. They just want the violence to stop. Jesse Johnston, CBC News, Surrey.
Back here in Toronto, more than 8,000 students could find themselves without a ride. That's if a looming school bus strike happens later this week.
We're the lowest paid people movers in the province. We recognize the inconvenience to parents, families. It's not the route we want to take, but we have to stand our ground at some point in order to achieve what we need to achieve.
Drivers will be in a legal strike position as of Thursday. Their union says school bus drivers often end up with a schedule that forces them to work without pay, adding they are expected to perform unpaid tasks before, after, and between their routes. Their employer says they only received the strike notice on Friday and that they need more time to review the demands. We're about to introduce you to a Toronto police officer doing double duty. When Jennifer DeKazel is finished her shift at 55 Division, she spends much of her off time acting as a mentor and friend to more than 30 young women. It's through a program she started called Girls Will Be Girls. It may sound like a lot of work, but as Talia Ricci shows us, the officer says she plans on remaining a part of these girls' lives as long as she can.
Girls Will Be Girls came about 11 years ago when I received a call for service with regards to bullying at a school that is right in my division that I work in 55 Division. It just turned from 4 girls and now over 35 girls 11 years later. What's so awesome is watching them at like their prom or graduation or being able to see them just flourish in life. To know that I'm a part of their life forever, which is such a blessing in my life.
It makes me feel like I'm able to just be myself and get along with people I would normally not be friends with.
So whenever we get together, we always do our Girls Will Be Girls motto.
I am a beautiful girl inside and out, and I will never doubt that. I will always be true to myself.
What are some of the Girls Will Be Girls dates that you've done over the years?
So what I tend to do is every 2 years I get 4 new girls. And I ask them what they want to do, what they want to get out of the program. And so we've done things like gone roller skating, we've gone to Great Wolf Lodge, we've gone to Laser Quest, we've gone to Wasaga Beach.
I feel like her being there, she was almost like a best friend, an auntie, somebody that was close enough to me to help me that I could trust. And her just being there just helped me a lot, especially going through high school.
It's changed my life a lot. And well, before I started Girls Will Be Girls, I used to be really shy and I wouldn't really talk to people a lot. When I'm upset, I can just talk to her, and it's a lot, and it's helped me a lot through my life.
Obviously, you're very busy as a Toronto police officer, so why do you make the time to do this?
So I'm very busy working frontline, but I do feel that giving back to the community, especially the community that I serve, a lot of times when these young girls have seen police in their neighborhoods, it may not be for the best of things. They are from very high-risk areas, so that's why this introduction with police and on a positive level really opens their mind and heart to, I'm a human being too, and we humanize the badge. I provide them love and some guidance, and however long they want to be in my life, that's up to them.
What an awesome initiative. There's more to that story as well. You can learn more about Jennifer DeKazel and the program. You can just head on to our website, cbc.ca/Toronto. All right, and Nick is back. So I know that you said we have a Couple days of rain to get through, but then how's the weekend looking? Do we have that to look forward to at least?
Yeah, you know what? The weekend is actually looking pretty good, but we do have a couple of days of rainfall to get through first. As you said, Chris, here's a look at the weather headlines. Again, rain showers beginning tonight. The risk for some thunderstorms. Southwestern Ontario, potential for a couple severe thunderstorms as well. Slight potential, but for the GTA, just the risk of a few isolated thunderstorms. The heaviest rain, though, north of the city, and we're going to time that out for you coming up right now. Here's a look at the radar image, and you can see some of the rain showers just starting to poke into southern Ontario. The heaviest of the rain, or the first round of the heavy rainfall, back down in Michigan. There is another round, though, if you follow this back further down toward Kansas. So what we're looking at here is a couple rounds of rain over the next day and a half or so. Timing it out, heading through tonight. You might see a few spotty showers just before the midnight hour, but generally we're looking at showers starting after about midnight and then continuing through till tomorrow morning's commute. Now, we're going to see a little bit of a break through the morning commute, but you notice if you're coming in from the north of the GTA, you will see heavy rainfall tomorrow morning and continuing through the day tomorrow. But it sort of arcs just around the GTA. Then tomorrow afternoon, the risk for some thunder showers and locally heavy rainfall. And then another round, as I mentioned, that second wave coming through tomorrow evening. And this could bring with it as much as about 10 to 15 additional millimeters of rainfall. And again, there we could see the risk of some thunderstorms as well. Total rainfall accumulations, here's how it maps out. Again, you notice that the highest amounts north of the city. Now, it says 9 millimeters for Toronto, but remember, this is very local stuff. I wouldn't put too much stock in that 9 millimeters. I'm calling for more about 10 to 20 millimeters in the GTA, especially if we see some thunderstorms. And then I mentioned the winds as well. Winds are going to pick up through tonight. And in fact, by tomorrow morning, easterly winds down by the lake, gusting to about 60, 70 kilometers per hour. They sort of start to taper off, though, by the evening hours tomorrow, so fairly short-lived. Right now, we're sitting at 9 degrees tonight, going down to an overnight low of 6 degrees across the city of Toronto. As we move through tomorrow afternoon, though, we're looking at temperatures up to only about 8 degrees because of the rain. Locally heavy rainfall, windy conditions through the morning. We start that slow climb in our temperatures back to the seasonal mark by the weekend, 16s, which is about seasonal for us. And it looks like it should stay dry for Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, you weren't kidding. It looks great for the weekend.
Yep.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
All right, and as we head to break, here's a quick look at where the markets closed today. We'll be right back.
This market update is brought to you by SSQ Insurance, reminding you that stronger communities make every person stronger.
In Venezuela, it's a day of violence and confusion. This morning, opposition leader Juan Guaido called for an uprising to begin against President Nicolas Maduro. And with some men in uniform by his side, he boldly called on the military to join in. Thousands of his supporters did, but it soon became clear not all Venezuelan soldiers are on his side. Evan Dyer has more on the still fluid situation and a warning tonight. There were some disturbing scenes there today.
Well, before sunrise this morning, Leopoldo Lopez, Venezuela's most prominent political prisoner, appeared at a major military airbase in the city Caracas, the capital city Caracas, alongside Juan Guaido, who's declared himself president of Venezuela since January. Leopoldo Lopez is Venezuela's most prominent imprisoned politician and the leader of Juan Guaido's party. In fact, probably he, rather than Juan Guaido, would have declared himself president had he not been under arrest. He said he was released by his captors, who are members of CBC, Venezuela's secret police, and DJSIM, which is Venezuela's military intelligence, two units that in the past have seen very few defections. So that seems to be significant. Shortly after Guaido and Lopez appeared at La Carlota Air Base, large crowds began to assemble there. We've seen other crowds assembling at other military bases and barracks around Venezuela. Quite a bit of conflict, tear gas, and some shooting as well. Clearly both rebel and loyal units still in the military fighting each other. We've even seen soldiers arresting soldiers in some of the videos coming out. Venezuelans here in Canada, some of them have gone to the embassy in Ottawa where they're voicing support for Guaido and Lopez and trying to get information out of Venezuela. Let's listen to a couple.
Basically, the information that we receive is through our relative and friend and colleagues in WhatsApp or Twitter or social media, because with the blackout, we have not access from what is really going on in Venezuela.
But what is encouraging is that for the first time, the CBC has taken this action.
On our side.
That's it.
So it remains unclear just how many military units in Venezuela are in rebellion and how many remain loyal to the Nicolas Maduro government, though clearly some do. And some of the senior leadership of the armed forces have been expressing loyalty through Twitter and other social media. Of course, there have been some very different reactions on the ground that we're seeing coming out. Let's look at one very, very violent one. This was National Guard forces outside of La Carlota, that airbase in Caracas, driving an armored car straight into a crowd of protesters and rolling right over them. But let's look at some very different images coming from Puerto Ordaz. This is another city in Venezuela. And here we see an almost identical vehicle driven by the same police force, the National Guard or gendarmes of Venezuela, turning around after negotiating with protesters and leaving the scene. So both kinds of scenes are coming out of the country. It's not clear, though, which way this is headed. Very far from clear so far. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
So Canada is one of about 50 countries around the world supporting Juan Guaido's self-declared leadership. Today, Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland said Canada is calling again for President Nicolas Maduro to step aside.
Venezuelans are in the streets today, demonstrating their desire for a return to democracy, even in the face of a violent crackdown. Canada commends their courage, and we call on the Maduro regime to step aside now and allow for a peaceful end to this crisis in line with the Venezuelan Constitution.
And as we showed you earlier, there were protests in our country as well. Several people protested outside Venezuela's embassy in Ottawa today in support of Guaido's uprising. Coming up, if you're planning on staying in an Airbnb, you won't want to miss this next story. What's supposed to be a home sharing service is in reality monopolized by big business. We'll bring you that CBC investigation coming up after the break. Airbnb promotes itself as home sharing, a way for owners to make a bit of cash on the side. But the reality in Canada is that it's really something much more commercial, and it's a multi-million-dollar business. A CBC investigation has found several companies control hundreds of properties each. Valerie Willette has the story.
What it really means is that people, for the first time, could become micro-entrepreneurs.
That's Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky describing how his company allows people to share where they live for profit. But a CBC analysis of 32,000 Airbnb listings tells a different story. We found almost half of the ads are not from single Airbnb hosts, but in fact appear to be commercial enterprises managing up to 200 properties in multiple cities. Topping the list, a billion-dollar startup based in California, a bachelor party planner, and a man employed by a property management company as a full-time Airbnb specialist. McGill University urban planning professor David Wachsmith has studied Airbnb for 3 years. He found that 10% of hosts account for the majority of bookings and revenue.
They've seen a business opportunity and they're taking it. You can't really fault them for that if they're obeying the law. The question is, do we have the right laws?
Thorben Weiditz feels we don't. He's an activist with the advocacy group Fairbnb.
The multi-listing hosts and commercial operators that have nothing to do with home sharing, that operate businesses, that those are the ones that generate the revenue for Airbnb, and Airbnb doesn't like to talk about it.
In a statement to CBC, the company explains its website is used by commercial operators, property managers, as well as homeowners. Valérie Ouellette, CBC News, Toronto.
It's a bit of a gray day today, but you are looking at a live shot of our beautiful waterfront. And it was certainly dry, but it won't last for too long. After the break, we'll give you the details on the latest forecast. Plus, this day 15 years ago, a movie that tried to make fetch happen was released in theaters. The film was shot right here in Toronto, launched an unknown Canadian actress into superstardom, and changed pop culture forever. We're not showing you yet, but we will right after the break. So the answer to our little riddle is Mean Girls, and we should all be wearing pink today in honor of the 15th anniversary of the iconic teen movie, shot here in Toronto with many local actors making their screen debut. The movie has a special place in this city's heart, and we're taking a look back to see why this film is so Fetch.
So you've actually never been to a real school before? Shut up. Shut up! I didn't say anything.
What's this say?
Filming was mostly done at 2 schools in Toronto, Etobicoke Collegiate in the west and Malvern Collegiate in the east, with many of the supporting actors pulled from the local comedy scene. And the movie has built a huge cult classic following and was even made into a Broadway play. Star Lindsay Lohan was originally slated to play ultimate mean girl Regina George, but that role eventually went to unknown Canadian actress Rachel McAdams, who went on to become an international superstar. All right, I'm not a regular anchor, I'm a cool anchor. Yeah. Anyone? It's my best Amy Poehler I could do. I won't ask you for a reference unless you have a quick one.
I'm bad at it anyway, you know. You got
right.
me stuck on that 15 years, though. I'm thinking, man, time flies.
I know.
15 years.
I know. In one way, it seems like just yesterday,
Yeah.
but in another way, it seems like a long, long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so does the warm weather. Right?
Okay.
I'm going to segue that.
Yeah, that's good.
8 degrees tomorrow, rain showers. Listen, if you're coming in from the north, we got heavy rainfall, also some thunderstorms as well for tomorrow. It's going to be a wet one for the next 36 hours or so heading into Thursday. Then it gets better for the weekend.
I will wait for the weekend for that nice weather.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, and that is our show for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Dwight Drummond will be back with you again tomorrow night at 6.